Hey guys, thanks for tuning in to another video on ForgottenWeapons.com. I'm Ian McCollum, and I'm here today at the VHU, the Military History Institute in Prague in the Czech Republic. We're taking a look at some really cool prototype Czech firearms. Today we have the ZKP-524. Now, just a quick note on the designation here. What that means is the K, well, Z means it's a small arm. K means it is designed by Koucký. There were two brothers, actually. A lot of the Czech firearms designers come in brother pairs. This was Josef and František Koucký, and they were responsible for a whole bunch of designs over a whole bunch of years, but that's the K. And then the P indicates it's a pistol. 524, the 5.2 are the year that the gun was developed, 1952, and the 4 indicates that it was actually the fourth product developed that year. So there was a lot of small arms experimentation and development going on in Czechoslovakia. Anyway, the rationale, the purpose of the ZKP-524 was to be a replacement for the VZ52 pistol. And it may seem a little bit odd that they adopt a pistol in 1952 and then they start designing its replacement in 1952. And that's not an accident. In fact, the official decree that adopted the VZ52 also ordered the beginning of development of its replacement. It's kind of an odd period at the early years of communism in Czechoslovakia where they decided to adopt the VZ52 even knowing that it wasn't a very good pistol. They recognized it wasn't good and it would need to be replaced, but they adopted it anyway. There were two guns that were developed to attempt to compete to replace the VZ52, and they were both very specifically based on the Soviet Tokarev pistol, which was in turn based on John Browning's 1911. So what we have here is essentially a prototype Czech 1911 in 7.62 by 25 millimeter Tokarev caliber, which is really pretty cool. Well, let's take a closer look at it. The external resemblance to a 1911 is massive here. I mean, obviously, a quick glance at this, you immediately think 1911, and it has a lot of 1911 features like the barrel bushing. It does not have a grip safety, but it does have a manual safety, very reminiscent of the 1911, slide stop, grips, like everything here. But again, instead of the American style of magazine release, we have a heel magazine release. Magazine holds 8 rounds, 7.62 Tokarev caliber. It's perhaps worth comparing this to a regular Soviet Tokarev pistol, which has, again, it's interesting, some of the same features, but some different. Like the Soviets used the thumb magazine release button instead of the heel. They did have a barrel bushing right there. And then also, just for reference sake, here's the CZ531. This is the pistol that directly competed against the ZKP-524. So similar elements on this, but no manual safety at all. Different here. Anyway, I have a separate video on this guy if you're interested. There are only a couple markings on here. We have a ZKP-524 model designation, there you go, on the slide. For what it's worth, this was designed in Prague. The company that's designated as the designer here is Konstruktion Praha, or Construction Prague, which really wasn't much of a thing. The design bureau all moved to Brno when this was being done, but the Koucký brothers were apparently kind of stubborn and insisted on staying in Prague, and so their little workshop in Prague essentially became Konstruktion Praha, and that's where this was designed. Manufactured in Brno, though. And then we have serial number 1, and that T in a circle is a military proof mark. So this was tested with proof rounds, proofed, marked, and then went through further testing. Disassembly here is going to be like the 1911. This doesn't really want to let the slide stop out, so I'm going to just start with the barrel bushing, push that down, take out recoil spring here. Then we can open the slide up. Then we can pull the slide stop pin out, and the barrel is going to come off to the slide. We have a guide rod with a little bit of an unusual link-up mechanism there. a single swinging link here for the Browning tilting barrel sort of action. And then because we have a barrel bushing, we're going to rotate that around, pull the barrel bushing out, and then the barrel comes out the front of the slide. There we go. So 2 locking lugs on the barrel, locking lug cuts in the top of the slide, very 1911-ish. We have a 1911 style plate on the back here to retain the firing pin. Push the firing pin in, take the retaining plate off, pull out the firing pin itself and its return spring. It is very tight, so I'm not going to take it out. But the extractor is actually a bit of an unusual design here, where it has a coil spring behind it there, and then the extractor drops vertically into the slide here. So in order to take this out, what you would do is push that coil spring back to take pressure off the extractor, which will then drop out this direction. But again, it's very tight in there, and so I'm going to leave it alone. So one of the cool elements here is kind of like the Tokarev, the 524 has a removable backstrap. So in order to get that out, we have this component here that we need to take out. I'm going to do that by actually manually depressing this little detent spring. There we go. That allows me to take out that guy. And then wiggle this out. There we are. So that's the safety lever. Then we take out this pin. That is going to also, by the way, if you don't hold on to the hammer when you do that, the hammer will go bouncing across the table. But there's the hammer, which has this spur here to act on its spring. And now I can lift out the backstrap of the pistol. Note that where the 1911 has a flat spring in the back, like a 3-part flat spring, the 524 has an actual coil spring. So coil spring and guide rod, and this acts as the hammer spring, lined up like so. So this pin is slightly eccentric, so when you cock the hammer, you are actually pushing this foot down, which compresses the spring here. Underneath that, we have the sort of 1911 style flat spring, which is going to act as the spring for the magazine catch in the bottom, as well as acting as the sear spring and the trigger return spring up here. So definitely a more complicated design than its competitor, a more complicated design than the Tokarev, which had all of this sort of stuff integrated into a removable fire control unit. There you go. There is the ZKP-524, all field stripped. Definitely complicated, definitely a very cool Czech rendition of basically the 1911 in 7.62 Tokarev. Only 2 examples of these pistols were made originally for testing. The testing took place in February of 1954, and it was this pistol against the CZ-531, which I also have a video on if you're interested in the other version of the Czech Tokarev. Ultimately, there was really no winner that came out of the trials. Both pistols had their pros and cons. This guy was the more accurate pistol. It was the less reliable pistol under like harsh conditions in dust and rain sort of testing. And it was the more expensive pistol to manufacture. But it was the more accurate one. So the testing committee kind of hemmed and hawed a bit, didn't make an immediate decision. After the tests in 1955, they did actually make one more example of this pistol with a few design changes made to strengthen it. You know, in testing, this thing got to about 4,200 rounds and then cracked, which the 531 had similar problems. But they did make an improved version, which was weirdly serialized too. So there was a serial number 1 and a serial number 2 of this, and then they just made another serial number 2. A little odd, but ultimately, the project never got any farther than that 3rd gun that was manufactured, because what the military decided was, first off, neither of these guns is quite ready as it is. Secondly, it's going to be really expensive to tool up and make a whole new run of pistols to replace ones that we literally just finished making. and it's a pistol for the Army. It's really not that important. A mediocre one is kind of just as good as a really good one. There are a lot of other pieces of equipment that the military needs that are a lot more important. Like, let's look at rifles or armored vehicles or missiles or aircraft or lots of other places they can spend the money and get a better, more improvement, more value than replacing their pistols. So even though both this and the CZ-531 would have been substantially better guns than the VZ-52 pistols, neither of them saw any further development. So that's as far as the project went. I'd like to give a big thanks to the VHU for giving me the opportunity to film this very cool prototype. In addition to their reference collection of all sorts of stuff like this, they also have a really fantastic Army museum open to the public. And if you find yourself in Prague, you should definitely set aside some time, like at least half a day, to check out the museum. In addition to the regular historical exhibits, they also have quite a lot of Czech prototypes on display, which is really cool to take a look at. So hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching.